Okay, Jen, if you could do the karakia, please.
When the red flashing lights. Yep, we're live.
Whakatakata hau ki te uru, whakatakata hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai. E hia ki ana te atukura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei mauri ora.
Thank you, Jen, for doing that. So, welcome everyone. We've got some apologies.
Just Arakata.
Right, and I have one from Ian Mackenzie.
Ian Mackenzie,
Yeah.
it's called. So.
That's all. So I'll move those apologies, please. Seconder? Yep. Les, all in favour? Aye. Carried. Thank you. Any extraordinary business? I don't think we've got anything on the agenda, have we, Dave?
Just that Judith Urgale was going to, some stage, come into the Teams meeting to talk about, just give us a wee update on Otawharikai.
Right.
So we thought we might do that around about the time of my zone committee update. She's not on board at the moment.
Excellent, thank you. Register of interest is in the front. I see, Richard, you've got a bit of forms to fill in there. Good man, everything else is there, so that's up to people to keep updated. The minutes from the last meeting have been circulated. Do I have someone to move that they're true and accurate record, please? Right, thanks. Ardiang has moved it, seconded by Richard. All in favour? Aye, carried, thank you. Any matters arriving in the minutes that anyone wants to discuss that isn't going to come up?
The one about the Calvert's Creek is it's already ahead of the Ashburton River liaison group and they're working on that.
Great.
Yes.
I did have a wee update from Ian about the about that too, that ECAN, the money that's involved, so we might just talk about that in general business quickly. Just to get a bit of a costing and what's going to happen there. Okay. And we'll then send a letter back, so we'll discuss that later. So that's some minutes to talk to correspondence. We've got a wee bit of that, David. Do you want to talk to that?
Oh yes, so resulting from start again with the microphone on. First correspondence is a letter to Cam Smith, Senior Strategy Manager at Environment Canterbury, and that's just supporting the work of the Hikeo Hines Water Enhancement Trust. And the second letter is around the Carter's Creek maintenance, which we just talked about, so just asking ECAN and Ashburton District Council to work together to help with sorting out the flooding issues there. And the third letter was a letter to Andrew Parrish at ECAN, who's the planning manager, just highlighting the vision document that's been done for Mid-Canterbury and expressing the committee's support for that document for the regional policy statement work that's going on. That's it.
That's great. Well, I might just talk then about the Carter's Creek. So Ian Mackenzie and giving me his apology, informing that he'd spoken to the ECAN engineers and the cost to do the project is around $3 million for the drainage, and they're not sure whether it's drainage or flooding, and it's possibly more drainage than flooding, and thinking that it should come out of the Hines District drainage pot, I suppose you call it, which of course doesn't have anything like $3 million in it. So there's a bit of a shortfall. So what will happen there, I'm not too sure. He suggested they might look at a targeted rate if the residents were prepared to do that. And but I think, unless Mayor Brown would like to comment, I think ADC has acknowledged that one of the culverts needs fixing or something. And do you know much about that, or?
No, I don't know much about that at all, but I know Janine Holland sent a letter of request in to me for some information, and that's been responded to. Yep.
Thank you. Do you think it's appropriate for us to send a letter back to the committee and say that we've got a bit of a reply from ECAN and we're doing something about it, or just wait till we get some more results, or do you do it, or?
Perhaps you could do it, just give them a wee update of what's happening, and
okay,
a high level update. Yeah.
We'll do that. Is everyone in the committee happy about that? Chris?
Yeah, just with the River Liaison Committee, where the topic did come up about it, because it's long-term plan time. So it's the Ashburton River, and they sort of think that they're part of that sort of area, and they do get protection from it. But we have asked, as a liaison group, asked ECAN to go back and have a look at what it's going to cost to do the work, and then those that benefit from it, if they want to, how they want to contribute. So it's part of the long-term planning process would probably be the best way, wouldn't it, Neil, to describe it? Yeah. So it's definitely on the agenda, and long-term planning time is a really good time to push it.
Well, will you keep in touch with the people who write the letter from Carter's Creek then? Will you inform them, do they know that the wheels are turning, or do we still send a letter from here? Just to let them know that we've actually did listen to them and have progressing it.
I think perhaps if it was just a very brief letter, just say that, yeah, that wheels are in motion, it's long-term plan time.
Okay.
And what else would you say, Neil? It's just that.
Keep engaged.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll do that. You make a wee note and we'll write a letter. Yep. Okay, thanks for that. So that's the letter's done. So, Hampstead School, is that right, David?
Yes.
So we've got Ben and
Jacob. So we've
Jacob,
got
sorry.
Jacob down there, and Jacob's mum, Kim, and Kylie, Jacob's teacher. So,
right, excellent.
So Jacob's going to come up the front now, Jacob, and he's got a bit of a presentation. He has got some photos which he wasn't able to add into his presentation, so we'll just pass those around.
Good work.
We've also got Sophie Blair. She's a facilitator of the Lagmore Westerfield catchment group and a local in that area that's going to come and give us some more context on the wetland, on the history of the wetland, but also what their plans are going forward now that they're an endangered species charitable trust. I can't see her floating around, but she should be here by now, so she'll join.
We're a really bunch of friendly people.
We might look scary, but we're not really. You're right, you got your microphone to press a button. Good man, you're onto it. The floor's yours.
Wetlands Visit, presented by Jacob Lompede. This introduction. This term at Hampstead School, our topic was if one wants to defy the future, they must study the past. We focused on learning about the endangered or extinct animals. We learnt about how they lived and how they died, especially about what predators contributed to this. Everyone in the class did different animals. One animal I researched was the pukeko. This is my report. Pukeko is the New Zealand name for the purple swampfin and is thought to have landed here from Australia. Pukeko are not threatened, therefore DOC doesn't actively work on them. The work that DOC does in plant and animal pest control increases the quality of the whole ecosystem, therefore contributes to the ongoing success of many common birds like the pukeko. The pukeko is a bird to the rail family. It is similar bird to take. It is about 51 centimetres long with distinctive colouring, a deep blue colour with a black head and upper parts, white feathers under the tail. Pukekos live in grass paddocks, croplands and even cities. They are mostly vegetarian but also eat other things. Their predators are cats and stoats and can be known to attack them. They may also eat the eggs, which means the chicks don't even get a chance to survive. We also spent some time once a week watching the TVNZ program Endangered Species Aotearoa with WWF. This was highly informative and it showed us a lot of different habitats around New Zealand. We learnt about where the animals lived and the habitats they needed. We also learnt that some animals were hunted down to near extinction before realising what was happening. Our wetlands trip was getting closer. We started learning about the wetlands habitat and the animals and birds that might be there. We were surprised to find that there were about 20 species of animals and the bird at the wetlands. Most of the plants are native species. Once at the wetlands, we were shown the big limestone with the fossils attached on it. That really got my attention because it was cool that the fossils had attached to the stone. While we walked around the wetlands, Edith, our speaker for the day, talked about different plants as we went and why they are important to the wetlands. It was interesting to hear that the seeds of the plants that used to be there years ago were thriving in the conditions that Russell had made. It was amazing to learn that around 200 years ago, the area between Timaru and Timald would have mostly been like that of the wetlands. Lots of streams and waterways linked with trees and bushes. It is great to see that this is one area is trying to go back to what it was like to establish habitats for our native wildlife. Russell also spoke with us about the fact that not all birds have came back to the wetlands yet, and they would return when the conditions are right for them. We were lucky as we could not see but hear many birds at the wetlands. One new plant that Russell has introduced was the rapo. We hear that he is trying to attract the bittern, which we had read about. This is exciting for us to see that this type of habitat is in our backyard and that these birds are beginning to return. We enjoyed seeing the weka at the wetlands, as this is one of the birds that we had studied. We sadly, however, saw a dead weka in the undergrowth as well, and learnt that it was probably a cat that got this. We also got to see the traps that Russell uses he had just captured a stoat recently. Edith also talked about a group of people that use these traps near the Ashburton River. It made us think a lot more about having cats near these areas and the importance of us not having our dogs off the leash in areas where these birds live. Russell also showed us some of the frozen predators he had managed to capture at his wetlands. We all enjoyed seeing these and learning more about the importance of trapping these animals. While we did not see any eels, mudfish or fish while we were at the wetlands, we know what these are there and an important part of the wetlands. We did see lots of insects flying around and know that they are bees, butterflies, dragonflies and many other insects that are important to the ecosystems. We were super lucky that Russell allowed us onto his wetlands to reinforce the learning that we have done. There is nothing like seeing an area like this in real life, and we hope it will be there for years to come so that children and adults can keep learning about the native ecosystems and wildlife in future years. It would be great to see more of the brown-tailed duck the next time we visit, alongside the weka and other birds we saw. Thanks also to Edith from Forest and Bird Society, Angel and Kim from Kanuka Mid-Canterbury Regeneration Trust, our teachers at Hampstead School who took us on this trip, and you for listening to my presentation.
Well, very well presented, and you spoke extremely well. Any questions for the young man?
I haven't got a question, but I'd like to comment on the way the presentation you have done. I'm the chair of Selwyn Waihora Zone Committee as well, and we do support a lot of schools down there, but we've never had a school come and present to us what you have. That's going to change. We will be getting the school to come and present to us. You did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
I think Sydney, who's in the big wide world out there, Jacob, has a question for you. You better be careful because I think she's a teacher.
She's a scientist.
Scientist. Sydney, have you got a question?
Hello. Wow, that was an amazing presentation. Well done, Jacob.
Thank you.
Want to know how old are you? Because I cannot see you on here.
I'm 11 years old.
In the school. All right. Okay. So you'll be a year 7 student?
A year 6.
A year 6. So, wow. Well done. For a 6-year-old, that was fantastic presentation. Well done.
Thank you.
Keep up. You'll be one of these people sitting on the big chair one day. Thanks.
Yeah, I'd just like to commend also Jacob for presenting to us today that presentation we had on the PowerPoint, and also those photos and the diagrams you brought in. They just add more to your presentation, which is great, and gets the point across to us. That's good. I especially like the one with the reward, $1,000 for the rep. I don't know where we claim that reward. There might be a question, perhaps. But well
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jacob, well done. What is it you want to do to help protect wetlands, or when you're nearly as big as us, whatever? What would you like to look back one day and say that you've done or we've done to make wetlands a really neat thing?
Probably like to keep and like get more endangered animals, like get the numbers higher.
That's good, thank you.
John from the back. It's Jacob on from Conservation. That's a very good presentation. Well, what I particularly liked was for your study, you picked a common species, the gecko. Most people pick the danger, but if we don't pay as much attention to the common species, they quite often end up like other species that are threatened. So that's very good approach.
Thanks.
Yeah, I'd like to commend you also. I think your teachers will be very, very proud, in particular Lois, who the Kānuka Trust worked with to facilitate the whole school visit. So the whole school came along. There was bus trips, there was people going left, right and centre. It had the potential to be chaotic, but it wasn't. It was actually quite delightful, and the weather was fun. We engaged with a lot of schools, but Russell's willingness to have the schools along there and let the children learn by seeing is pretty commendable. But I think some other schools around to learn from this, all that study culminating in an actual visit just to crystallise what's actually going on. So one day it might be nice to get you back and you can actually help Russell plant some plants or get a better understanding of the traps. And I think we just see this as perhaps the start of some of those learning opportunities. And I was talking to Lois, she's pretty keen to see that as well. So well done.
Thank you.
Well, thanks, Jacob. I'm not sure what happens these days, but if I was your teacher, I'd give you a gold star. We'll give him a clap for it again. Well done. The next person is Sophie Blair. Now, maybe Angie might introduce Sophie, please.
Yeah, so as you guys know, I wear a couple of hats, so it wasn't only a Kānuka Trust thing. The Mid-Canterbury Catchment Collective are pretty proud of one of our newer catchment groups to form in the Lagmore-Westerfield area. So it's Russell's Patch. One of the reasons they came together was around enhancement of biodiversity. And one of the quick questions is, where do we start? Well, you start by going 2 kilometres down the road and looking at the work that Russell has done. Russell hosted a lot of schools in days gone by. It hasn't happened so much recently, but perhaps this might be the catalyst that we can open the door and get more schools happening. Sophie's working with us. We're trying to get a shed talk happening at Russell's. I don't know if anybody saw Country Calendar a couple of weeks ago where they were out in a wetland environment. So if we could organise a wetland day that children could do some learning, but also adults could do some learning as well. Russell's got the welcome mat out, and Sophie, she was very heavily involved in the startup of the Pomahaka Catchment Group, which is quite, well, it's award-winning and quite well-renowned, so she's bringing some of the knowledge that she learnt down there and sharing it with her local community too.
Thank you, Ange, for the introduction, and it's really good to be here. I actually didn't know where to come to begin with, but I made it. As Ange has alluded to, my name's Sophie. I am a farmer in the area. Russell is actually my neighbour, and I've just returned home to the farm after being down in Southland for the last 3 years, and I'm now also facilitating the Lake Moisterfield catchment group. So we've just in the starting up stages. We've got a few keen farmers on board, and we're just trying to get things rolling and see where we go. So I've actually known Russell since I was a little child, and he was also really good friends with my grandfather. But unfortunately, my first encounter with Russell was sitting in the passenger seat of the farm ute, where he leaned across and said to me, "Now, if your fox terrier comes onto my property, I'm going to shoot it." Cats, dogs, all predators. I was petrified, and thankfully he never shot my fox terrier or any of my other dogs. A few years later, Russell, thankfully, and we're very lucky to have been taken over to his house, and behind his house he had a bird sanctuary. So this was kind of the beginnings of what we knew of Russell other than just as a farmer. And he had a pond out the back, and he had all of these native birds and non-native birds and a swan that used to attack you. At this stage, Riverbridge was just starting up, and fast forward many, many years, a 91-year-old Russell Langdon is still daily going out to Riverbridge and fixing fences or currently building boardwalks and planting new trees and plants and looking after the wonderful place that he's created today. So Riverbridge, if you have a look on that sheet of paper, is just set just on the south bank of the south branch of the Ashburton River. It's about 300 maybe metres from the river, and it's approximately 8 hectares. So Russell started this project as a Millennium Project, so back in 2000, and has developed it over the last 23 years. Because it's so close to the river, the wetland was actually easy to develop because the water is only a metre below ground. So the actual wetland itself in the base was relatively easy to form, and has consequently led to expansion and expansion and expansion. Over the years, Russell, with the help of his younger brother John, who is only 2 years his junior, so still 89 years old, have planted a mixture of both native and a few exotic plants and trees, with the main aim of creating a thriving habitat for wildlife, be that birds, lizards, or aquatic species. Just the other day we went on a bit of a wetland and planting tour, and Russell came along with us for part of it. And once someone said, "Oh, we thought we've sprayed off all of this gorse and things, and we're going to plant it, but we thought maybe we'd burn it first." The first thing Russell said was, "Don't you dare burn that. The lizards live there." And it's just that little knowledge that you don't realise and that you don't think of, and everyone's like, "Oh, okay, maybe we won't burn that." So currently at Riverbridge, Russell is planting out kahikatea, and the place is full of matai flax, many other plants as written down on there for you. And oak trees, surprisingly, planted originally a long time ago for acorns, so that his birds had a source of feed throughout majority of the year. As Jacob had alluded to, Riverbridge also holds permits for breeding different birds and has mudfish and the likes all in the wetland. But the beauty of this wetland is that it starts and it stops in his property. So there's no risk of trout coming in from somewhere else and eating all of the native wild aquatic species that he's added in, and he's creating a really cool, thriving environment. Riverbridge itself has been future-proofed. It was QE2 covenanted 7 years ago and is currently held, no, not 7 years ago, sorry, in 2007, and is currently held in a trust. So Ben Aitken, who is Russell's grandson, is heavily involved in a lot of the admin and the applying for grants and that sort of stuff. And further being on the ground and helping do the hard work along with many other people involved to maintain the wetlands. One of the biggest risks, not just for Riverbridge, but also for our community and the community as a whole, is the loss of Russell's knowledge and his passion and his understanding and love for creating such an amazing place, which unfortunately at 91 is inevitably going to happen, and hopefully not too soon. Hopefully we're able to glean a lot of knowledge out of him before then. I had some conversations with both Russell and Ben prior to coming here today, and I asked them what their biggest challenges were and what their aims are for further down the track. So one of the biggest challenges was the 2021 floods. It was devastating for the wetland. Unfortunately, the river punched out at my place, came straight through my place, and the mainstream went straight through the middle of his wetland. It took out all the fencing, and there was a whole lot of rubbish there to have to be cleaned up. And it's getting there, but the fencing's still being mended. There's still things that need cleaned up, and it's just taking a lot of time to happen. Another one of the biggest challenges that Riverbridge Conservation Park have is funding and time. So Russell started Riverbridge himself and poured a whole lot of money and time into it, and as it developed and grew and they created the Riverbridge Native Species Trust, this trust was able to apply for funding and grants and access quite a lot of different grants for different things, whether that be planting and plants. I think they can also get some chemicals as well, but the biggest issue is that a lot of the other stuff, including the general day-to-day maintenance and running of Riverbridge itself, can't be funded. They haven't managed to find a fund or access money to be able to go out and do it. So you've got a 91-year-old, you've got an 89-year-old, and you've got many other relatives and people involved in their spare time coming out and trapping predators and doing all of the spraying and trying to keep this place going. Unfortunately, as I said, time is another big thing, whether that be whether that be Russell himself being a little bit slower to do things, or Ben and having to do it on his weekends. The Legmore Westerfield Catchment Group we're ready and willing to help out where we can with Russell and with the wetlands, because it's the biggest risk is it becoming too much for him and too much for the people involved, and it becoming too much for us to get to when the time comes that they actually put their hand up and say, hey, we do actually need help. The main goal that Russell and Ben and the Riverbridge Conservation Park and the Riverbridge Native Species Trust is to create a place that is environmentally and financially stable. So this purely due to the challenges. So the aim is to create the place that will stay around forever, that everyone can come and visit, and that schools like Hampstead are able to continue going to. Alongside schools, they have organisations and also, more recently, the Legmore Westerfield community and our catchment group come along to have an introduction to see what is possible, what we can aspire to, and just to mainly appreciate the hard work that they've put in over the last many, many years. We're very lucky to have a very cool space in our community and such a wealth of knowledge and passion in Russell. There is a lot to be learnt from Riverbridge, whether that be do's or don'ts, and hopefully we're able to glean some more of this knowledge off Russell over the next few years. But that's pretty much it. A very brief overview. I can try and answer some questions if you have them, but I am not the Russell Langdon. Unfortunately, he couldn't come today because he was going to the cattle sale. Thank you.
Last year we have some budget here from Econ, and last year we had reached sort of the last minute to allocate the budget. Personally, I would like to see some of this budget allocated sooner than later this year, so we don't reach the end and need to allocate all of it. And I was wondering if we could go into conversation with the trust about some kind of funding application for the things that you mentioned, sums and something like that, and then go ahead and see if we can help.
That would be great. I mean, I'm sure Russell would love to host you out there as well if you wanted to have a look and see the good work that's been done. They're currently building a boardwalk, so I'm just not sure. Haven't been there in the last couple of weeks, so I'm just not sure how far through it is at the moment. But yeah, I'm sure that they would be more than happy to have you guys around if that's what you wanted to do as well.
Yeah, you mentioned that he's introduced some exotic plants. Has it been exotic like fish?
No, so it's
good.
just native fish. The exotic plants are mainly just the oak trees for the acorns, really.
No, just because, you know, our waterlands are getting covered in goldfish and carp and everything like. They're introduced with exactly the same thing happened there where a flood came through and washed them all out of ponds into our normal running waterways.
No, Russell's very passionate about mudfish and about freshwater crays and that sort of stuff. He's very much it is their community essentially where they will continue to hopefully live and thrive and keep breeding.
You've got some Kekawai in there, is it?
I think so, yeah.
We're looking for some, yeah. Out of areas where you're introduced.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think on Les's point, I think Russell's been, he's had some established networks and he's really keen for those sorts of opportunities. We've been talking with Steve Carrick, have I got that right? From Environment Canterbury. He's the Pomatico that does shed talks. We see it as a great mahinga kai opportunity and access, as like I said, the gates are wide open from Russell's perspective. So we would like to be able to help facilitate. It's been talked about for a long time. Hempstead School coming along has kind of been the catalyst to get it right back on the to-do list. So opportunities like that, I'd like to talk to you. Yeah.
Are there any other questions for Sophie? No. Yeah, Sophie, that's a great idea, and I think we'd be keen to come out and have a look. We might have a bit of time with the school visit, but as it's a project that works very well with the community, and obviously the schools are benefiting, I think as Artie pointed out, it'd be something that we'd certainly like to have some input into helping where possible. So we'll get Dave to organise, or Ange with you, when we can go out there. Chris, do you have something?
Yeah, under the water management strategy, we've got targets with trying to support wetlands. Is it about supporting wetlands that are already there, or is it creating new ones? Les might know more, or Neil. I'm just wondering where something like this would fit in. But it's, you always got to look after what you've got, rather than start throwing more money at new stuff that we haven't got. Yeah.
Just carrying on from Artie's point about the funding. So the funding we have, we've committed 10,000 at the moment to the Otawharakai water testing. So that means there's 65,000 that we haven't spent yet, has to be spent by the end of June. So our funding is only guaranteed year by year. So I noticed you talked about, you know, ongoing management, ongoing maintenance. We may not be able to assist long-term funding, but if there's particular funding for particular projects, that might sit better. So maybe have a wee think about that, and then we can get in touch regarding application forms and stuff with Ange. Yeah, cool.
Oh, thanks, Sophie, and we look forward to seeing you again over at the Trust somewhere. At the
No, thank you very much for having me and for giving all of us the opportunity to come along and have a talk today.
It'd be good to get some funding from Doc.
We'll just stop there.
Doc would say so we'll get some funding too.
Oh, I didn't see you there, John.
There was a bit of spare cash flopping around, is it?
You got to, fight with this year's been allocated,
Right, what's next?
Election chair.
Election chair, so I should go and sit over there, and you could,
If you want, I'll just do.
Stavely, spread out the Stavely possum traps.
So, so Bill's just removed himself from the meeting slightly while we talk about the next paper, which is agenda item number 8, appointment of committee chair and deputy chair. So it's been just over a year since we had our last election for these two roles, so it's time that we do it. It should be done annually. At the moment, I'm not aware of any nominations for the position of chair, but I'll just call for nominations.
I could nominate Bill if he's acceptable.
Well, Bill has indicated that he doesn't really want to be elected, but he's happy to stay on in the role, which would achieve almost the same thing, until we do the refresh process, which will start probably around April next year, and we'd have new members in by August. So if there's no nominations, we could just pass a resolution that Bill stays on in that role until that point. Would that be?
I'll move that one.
Okay. You okay with the wording on that, Carol?
Yep.
Yep. Do we have a seconder? Artie? All those in favour? Against? Carried. So, Bill, you can come back now. So the next position is deputy chair.
Well, thanks for that, and I didn't want to be the chairman that stays too long, and which I'm in danger of doing, but I think if the refresh process in August or whenever,
Yep.
with Neil and Ekin, and hopefully there'll be some good candidates, and if to come forward as chair or something, they'll look out for. If someone within this group doesn't want to, but if someone in this group does want to, you know, we can give you a bit of training or encouragement, so just let us know. Right,
Deputy chair.
deputy chair, so
Same thing, really.
will you talk through it?
Okay. So, have I got the right button? Yes.
Yep, you're on.
Yep. So, do we have any nominations for the position of deputy chair? Well, Chris?
I can do, but it's, I think deputy chair is a position that should be like a stepping stone if at all possible, but
Bit of a
I'm
training
happy
position.
to carry on doing it, but if there's anyone that's got no.
So Chris didn't have his mic on, but there's no one online anyway, so it's okay. So perhaps just thinking about what Chris has said, that this could be kind of a bit of a training position, a chance to try it out and get familiar with the role. Is there anybody who would like to nominate someone or nominate themselves for the position of deputy chair? Nope. So Chris, are you willing to stay on in the role
I'm
at
happy
that
to
point?
stay on and, yeah, till the refresh is complete.
Okay.
Great.
So can we have a mover for that? Yep. So Ange and Richard. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Carried.
Oh, thanks everyone. So business as usual. Stavely Camp, is that next, or have you got your zone update? A bit more to do, Dave.
We might
do you
do the Stavely Camp first because I was waiting for Jude to join the meeting as he wasn't
Okay.
yet, so
Great.
yeah.
So Jen, are you set to go?
Yeah. I'll
Great.
just do it from here.
Yeah, sure.
quickly, yeah.
That's, yeah.
So this is just to let you know what is going on in Stavely Camp, particularly that we have a weed wrangling weekend coming up at the end of October, the 27th to the 29th. So this is mainly, we're organising it to try and get a lot of volunteer hours, which is part of the criteria for some of our funding that we've got, but also essentially this forest is not going to survive as a native remnant if we don't get more hours on the ground, more human hands taking out some more weeds, as Dave and Bill will know from the little the little working bee we did a few months ago, whenever that was. So yeah, you can help us by publicising the event. We're going to be, got a big social media campaign happening. So if you're not going to be here, you might share it with people that you know of who might be interested. And yeah, as I said, we're aiming for 400 hours in that weekend. However, we've also got Fridays in the Forest happening, which is the same sort of thing. We're just trying to get some community engagement going in order to make sure that this forest does manage to stay as a native remnant. And I think it's pretty obvious from our last presentation as well that it's community engagement and actual people, getting in there and doing stuff that is going to be the saviour of these little places that are otherwise at risk. I made a little suggestion to, when we talked about the biodiversity strategy with the ADC, that perhaps if we could cover off several strands of a strategy like that at once and engage people and do the educating and engaging through things like the district council or schools or businesses doing team building and things like that to come along, and we use a protect, restore and regenerate project like ours or like Russell's or like Forest and Bird have at Harris Reserve, and actually educate and engage our people by doing stuff down at those places. So that's my little suggestion out there in the community. And then the other thing is just to let you know as well, we have mentioned it briefly before, but we are launching a community possum trap library very shortly. It's actually launching at the end of November. We have decided to only do possum traps at this stage because we've done a little research and development and decided that we do not want to be responsible for people using DOC 150s out in the community. So we're taking that liability off our shoulders and we're just going to be using Tim's traps. But we think from the we've had some guinea pigs in the community doing some stuff, and we think that we can potentially catch about 5,000 possums a year. Yeah. So
You're going to start calling you Mr. Possum.
Hey, I caught one the other day, okay.
Now, when you ask about skinning them, one of the actual issues that is coming up that we're investigating at the moment is the disposal of the carcasses, because that becomes quite difficult for somebody if they end up catching lots and lots, but they're in a small space and they don't want to dig holes all the time or whatever. So we are looking into how we might go from carcasses to pet food, and just investigating that option at the moment, which may end up being something that we might apply for funding here for, because obviously there will be a bit of resources that we would need in order to do that. But yeah, just to let you know kind of where that conversation is going. So that's about it. Any questions? Clearly explained. Very good. Oh.
I think this is pretty exciting off the back of some of the other levels of interest that we've got happening out there. And as a person who went to Staveley Camp, I think, Form 2, I'd love to see more of our schools take advantage of it, but also get involved. I'm wondering about publicity. You obviously got a social media campaign, but could ECAN possibly do one of their stories, Dave, It's a weed wrangling's got a great heading there already fit to go, and likewise potentially ADC, if we could get it out through some of your comms teams or some of those channels. It looks good on our biodiversity strategy and for AdBag. So I could talk to a few people about that information at the Staveley store. But one of the other hook-ins I wondered is the Methven Community Board Centre. Going and talking to them. I didn't know too much about what they did, but through the vision and everything else, we're finding there's already engaged pockets of people that could be tapped into, and they're up in your area.
Methven Community Board.
Yeah.
Great. Yes, we are reaching out to all the different sort of volley organisations, and yeah, we're going out in all sorts of different directions. So that's a good one that we hadn't thought of. And I'll send you through as well our social media tickets, thumbnails and whatnot.
I was just thinking, Jen, I haven't talked to the committee or Dave about it, but we could try again and have our zone committee meeting. It's a Friday, but have it in the morning instead of the afternoon. Have it in the morning, have our meeting, and then help a bit of clearing the bush in the afternoon, and that gets it started off for the weekend you've got. If that's a possibility, and we could advertise that and maybe we could get a 6th or 7th form school group maybe, or someone a bit older that would come out and we could supervise. Or
studying for exams.
Tiffany from Ashburton College has talked about there's a lot of interest from Ashburton College, and I think it's within some of the ag students, but going for some of those younger ones. But really, we've got resources in Methven, Mount Hutt as well that.
So we could work something out on the Friday, and Chris could be in charge of the teenagers or something. So if that's possible, is that possible, Dave?
For our October meeting?
Yeah, what's on October?
It's the 27th, isn't it?
It's a Friday, I think, is it?
Yeah.
Yes.
So we'll just run, would that work for you if we can make that work?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm going to be inviting back some of the schools who have already done some work there. The only issue I can see, or, the only thing that I will have to organise, which other people might be able to help with, would be gear then to use. So
You had quite a few loppers, I thought you had quite a few.
I do have quite a few, but not hundreds.
All right.
But we'd probably put people in groups with,
Yeah.
but that would be my only thing, would be
Okay.
getting more
Well, if the committee's
borrowing gear.
okay with you, look at the front, we'll circulate and see what the Friday's like for everyone, because it's a different day to what we normally do. And if we can make it work, we will.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
So you still want to have a meeting as well?
You'll do the meeting in the morning, unless there's nothing, unless we haven't got an agenda. If there's nothing coming, we might not have much.
Potentially some funding or something, but apart from that.
Yeah, if we've got it, not much, but we might have a meeting while we're up there.
If required.
Yeah.
Does that mean because you were going to be in apology, does that mean you?
I could if it's at the end of the week.
Okay. Okay,
We'll talk about that.
let's look at that.
Okay, any other? Well, that's good. Thanks, Jen. You're doing a good job out there, and hopefully it'll. Chris wants to do. Yeah, Chris. Sorry.
Jen, the Possum Trap Library,
Yes.
have you got funding for it? Or are you doing it out of your own?
So it has come out of one of the things that we got Y funding for in the first year. So we've got some funding to start it out. I've just applied to the World Wildlife Fund for more funding for that. So hopefully we'll get that. I mean, at the moment, it's kind of, we've sort of got enough. But if you're offering any more funding.
Well, what I was going to suggest is I know you're conflicted and you have to step aside from this, but actually getting involved in doing the predator stuff. And we were talking about how you stop with wetlands and whatever, getting more traps out there, using dock or whatever, and the young ones, showing them what you can do with trapping and a bit of apple and cinnamon, and how you do that and how we start recording it. And having a library for it is something I'd really actually be supportive of using some of our funding for. But I realise you're fully conflicted in the process, but how is it, if someone's in our regions trying to set something up like that, how do we get in behind them and try and support it?
Put an application
in. Yeah, well, it's good to have a bit of the tone from the rest of the zone committee. Is it a good idea? But I think it's a good idea myself personally.
Yeah, when you're looking to using possum meat as pet food, and I hope that whoever you're doing it with realise that possums do carry the gene of bovine tuberculosis. So, we don't want that back out in the community.
Yeah, no, actually, Les, we've just got all the MPI documentation that would be required for each property to have to do that. So it would be a massive undertaking, and we're just taking it very slowly at the moment to find out what is needed. But yes, there's that, and there's also leptospirosis, which is another quite devastating disease if you're the person that gets it. So yeah, lots of health and safety stuff to consider.
I support Chris's idea. I like where you're coming from. I know your catchment group's quite focused on predator control, certainly not the only one. I'm heading up the Rakaia Gorge after this, where everyone's up there focusing on predator control. So the more coordinated and strategic we can be on that, the better. Hopefully, no doubt you'll talk to this at the Ashburton District Council Biodiversity Advisory Group thing, that as part of that strategy, because that loops everything in there as well. And there was one more thing, but it's gone.
I think following up, you got something?
Yeah.
Oh, you go.
Just made me think when you said that, Ange, we've been talking offline about people from the Rakaia Gorge coming to talk to the Zone Committee about their projects. Maybe they could come to Staveley, and that could be our meeting partners, hearing from them. It wouldn't be as far for them to come.
I've remembered the other thing I was going to say, yes, and off the back of that, so Tim Exon spoke at the last AdBag group from DOC, and there's certainly a lot of knowledge in the predator-free 2050 space, so if we can tie all of that together, which I'm sure you've said in the past has been the intention, but make Staveley the sort of gathering place for some of those conversations, I think that would be pretty useful.
Well, I think, Jen, following on from what Chris said, there's no problem with you putting an application in for trapping or whatever, and maybe Angel, someone will help you with that. Obviously, you can then not vote or present it, but your group can put one in, and then we can deal with it. That's great. Okay. Oh,
yeah, it'd be great if anything that's done can be used as education and enabling rather than doing, because doing is a secondary phase, which you only get a wee bit done. But if you educate, you get more people interested across the whole district. Because I know it's in these catchment groups, but it's the wider farming community aren't sort of doing it. It's just shoot and hope type scenario. So if you can get that, you actually get a better outcome. Because you get a wider, people are willing to buy the trap if they, if they know how to do and get, and that's quite often the bit that
how do you
stops you.
suggest we do that? Because I like the idea.
Good suggestion, how to do it. But it is, because I'd only heard about it when I went for that at the AdBag meeting. And so it's not that widely known outside the groups that are doing it.
Sorry, Richard, do you mean about trapping or educating about what?
Well, it's like the old adage, you give a man a net and up some fish and you go fishing. And so you give a man a trap, he'll go trapping. But you don't do the trapping for him, because if you do the trapping for them, if you know what I mean, they won't. That's just a easy outcome. So if we can educate people more.
This is definitely, so it's a library.
Yeah.
We don't really expect to get the traps back unless people stop using them. So essentially we're going to be subsidising you a trap, but we'll be teaching you how to use it and making sure that you can use it, giving you signage for your property, and also teaching you how to record the data so that we keep all the, get all the results. So it's very much about community engagement and education and building knowledge, actually more than it is about trapping, to be honest. The trapping is kind of the offshoot benefit, and it's mostly about trying to get people engaged. Yeah.
So geographically, you've got Staveley Camp. How wide are you going to go with this trapping? Have you any idea?
Obviously, everything's pretty experimental at this stage. So we're kind of advertising in our local area, foothills sort of area, but we'll see what the interest is. I mean, if we get people ringing us from further afield, then yeah, you know, we want interested people is the biggest thing.
You don't want the traps to go out and then sit in a shed.
No, and so we'll be keeping in touch with people to see if they are using them. And other people have had ideas about, like, getting a few friends and sharing them around. So I might do it for 3 months and then hand them on to you, etc. So there's a few different ideas about, but we'll just have to see how it goes.
Through the app, you'll be able to see who's.
That's good. Oh, thanks, Jen. That was you've got a good project up there. Gosh.
Well, we're getting through it now.
Record, are we?
Yeah, we're beating Chris's record by a country mile.
We're running a proper meeting too.
And it's a proper meeting. The only thing left on the agenda is my update, and I've only got one item. I've got possibly 2 other items that are not in there. So it's just that the water quality for contact recreation report has just come out, and probably the main one in Ashburton, I think, is just the State Highway 1 E. coli, which we've known about for a long time. Jude Urgale was hoping to join us. I suggested about 2 o'clock and we're about 3 minutes to. I might take the opportunity, and I haven't spoken to you, Bill, yet about this, but I wanted to before the meeting, but just let you know that I'm probably going to be moving on as your facilitator.
You put us through all these elected officers, you don't tell anyone and you think you're just going to do that.
Well, what's happened is...
Next subject.
Well, that's very kind. Not straight away, but what's happening is our regional committee is being disbanded, and so Jamie, who came to our meeting a couple of weeks ago, last month, she's been 50% of her role has been regional committee. So, and we've also had a person on parental leave in South Canterbury who's not coming back. So I'm carrying 3 zone committees at the moment. So Jamie, who looks after Selwyn Wahora, is now going to transition into looking after Ashburton, and I'm going to transition into, well, I'm already looking after OTOP. So I'll be just one south of you, so still see you guys. So what's going to happen is Jamie will start coming along to meet the next couple of meetings, and then we'll slowly, I'll disappear and she will become your person.
The best one, eh?
Yeah, I am.
Very
I am.
unsatisfactory.
I know. Well, I just really enjoyed this committee, and I feel, yeah, it's a bit sad, but it's. I think. I mean, Les knows Jamie. She's very, very competent. And she runs rings around me, to be honest. Very capable.
We went for 8 and 4 years, so she stuck it out.
Yeah. So, John's got something down the back. I don't know the official reason. It never really got going again. Ange might have a better idea than me.
Yeah. Positive stories continue, that scale things up and expand it out. So hopefully it's not a sign of something to get chopped next.
I wonder if we can have with the schools, if we approach the schools and say that every school, so we've got 8 meetings a month, so 8 schools come every month, one class comes along, so we might have Mount Hart, and Methven, and then say Long Beach, Mount Somers, but then get the young involved a bit, because that young guy did really well, and that gives us a bit of a focus to the youth, which might help us as a zone committee, carry forward for existence, or because as we're all doing this for the future, isn't it? It's not so much about us, it's what's going to happen after us.
There is a clause within the structure of having a youth committee.
That's right. So if we've got a few schools involved, we should look at that. There's a lot to do before you go there.
It's different to having a actually having engagement with all the different schools. I think you're going to have bigger touch points by doing what you're suggesting.
Because I think you'll find every school has got a kaitiaki project or something like that that they're working on, and the focus for them was wetlands, but the Music Trust is now working with, I think, 8 different schools.
Like some Mount Summers, they go up the Ashburton Gorge.
Correct.
And Lake Hampton. So once they've done that, that's a good focus. So yeah, there's lots of.
Oh, sorry. The Mayoral Forum talked about the regional committee and the lack of meetings and why was it continuing on, and I think ECAN made the decision to can it, and as Liz said, there was no support from others, so even the zone committees, the Mayoral Forum has asked for them to be reviewed, and ECAN have, I think it's either end of 24 or 25, one or the other, can't recall which day it was, Dave.
I heard 25.
Yeah, I think it's 25, yeah, to review and see if they're working well, if they need reinvigorating or not, or whatever, but just review them. So that's on the process as well.
Just while we're talking about kids, with OTOP we had a little planting day at a stream down in Timaru last week, and was working with these kids. It was really cool, and I thought it was interesting. You might be interested, Les, that you know how education's changed from my time in terms of Te Ao Maori. We went to plant these plants, and this little girl says to me, "Oh, we have to say a karakia." I said, "What?" She said, before we put this plant in, we need to say a karakia." And I said, "Oh, do you know one?" And they knew too. And it was whakataka te hau that we had here before, they knew it off by heart, and I was trying to keep up and remember the words. Yeah, and they did that a few times. So I think, you know, we've come a long way. It's quite interesting. Doesn't look like Jude is going to be joining us. Maybe what I'll do is I'll get some sort of an update and send it out. So,
Well, I asked Dave because my understanding is, and I haven't heard anything official yet, is that the consents for the farmers up in Lake Heron and the Murray Lakes have not had their consents renewed as yet. So, and whether the council, whether ECAN is going to renew them is possibly a moot point. And I just wanted to say, has something been happening there? Because the farmers had come and presented to us, and we had been up there. And I felt if that had happened without us knowing anything about it, we really haven't done a very good job as a committee, because we're not in the process, and it's a big thing to not renew a consent. And if that's a decision just being made without consultation, I'd find that interesting. But so I just asked for a bit more information on what was happening, and Dave has looked into it a bit late. And
Jude's just sent me a message now. She's having trouble getting in, so I'll just send her the link. I don't have Zoom. Okay.
is she going to do a Zoom for us?
Yes, she's coming via Zoom, so I'm just going to send her the appointment, and then she'll be able to get in. So we'll get it from the horse's mouth.
As we focused on she's coming in, but as we focus on the schools in the different areas in Rakaia Gorge, it obviously didn't work for this week, but if we could get some more regional representation in what's happening as well, I think that would be helpful. Find out about projects like we found out with Rakitata quite late on in the piece, but if we could find out the project this afternoon, for example, up in the Rakaia Gorge is $330,000 across 3 years, so on $1 million project. But, you know, it would be good to understand what they're doing, because it all connects up ultimately at the end of the day. So rather than find out when these projects are finishing or after the fact, it would be good to learn earlier, because then I think, and even the community up there, it came as quite a surprise to them. So that early engagement bit is really important if we're going to get buy-in and we're going to see the scale of change that we need to.
Hi, Jude.
Oh, hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. So perfect
Right.
timing. We
Yeah.
run out of other things to talk about, so we'll hand over to you.
Yeah, kia ora. Thanks, everybody. I just thought I'd pop along. I guess I'm here in response to a question that was asked around, I'm just trying to, I don't have the wording in front of me. What was the question?
Well, the question was basically what's happening to the farmers' consents up in the lake.
That's right.
Yeah.
So no worries. So Environment Canterbury's been in contact with the 4 landowners around the status of their consents. So we are currently working to engage with them so they understand what this means for them. So there are 2 aspects at play. We have 2 consents that are lodged and are sitting in our backlog that need to be progressed. And there are 2 farmers with existing consent. So what we are looking at is engaging in a conversation for us as we explore the reviewing of those farming land use consents that are consented and still for some time, given the effects on water quality, the consent conditions aren't addressing those effects. So essentially we're exploring the review of those consents. The time frame around that would be that we would work towards the November date as per on there as a consent condition on those 2 farmers' consents.
So just clarification. So the existing ones that have been reviewed, they're expiring in November. Is that correct?
No. So quite often with any consent, there's a review date as part of consent conditions.
Yeah.
The consent date is, these consents relates to, I think it's November and March. So we are working to understand, and we want to work with the farmers so they understand what it means for them as we move towards that date. Okay. So the point here is working with the farmers around them understanding what it means, what it looks like, and what will need to happen. So there hasn't been a formal decision to review them, but we're exploring that option.
And the 2 that have been lodged for renewal, how long have they been in the pipeline for?
Oh, sorry, I don't have the dates in front of me. These all got caught up with the overseer review work that was done by MFE. So I think one was 2000. So one has been a renewal of a consent. So they had a consent for a short duration and are operating under continuance. And the other one is, I want to say 2019, but yeah.
Okay, thank you for that. Is there any other questions for Judith?
Yeah, that's probably all the detail I can go into, but I'm happy to,
Neil.
Just generally, Judith, you talked about consents being held up and backlogged. When are they likely to be progressed?
Sorry, these particular consents?
Generally, the consents that are being held up. You talked about consents being in the backlog.
Yeah, there are some consents that haven't progressed in processing. There are lots of different reasons for that, but we're working on a remediation plan at the moment to increase our capability to process those through.
When would consent holders know what that date was that they'll be progressed?
I don't have that information in front of me.
Yeah. Thanks.
Judith, the main reason why I asked that question is there have been a few rumours about it, and I felt that we're a committee that was a bit involved with what was happening up there, and if major decisions are being made and we didn't know about it, not that we can do much about it, but we can listen, and if we're sort of kept out of the loop of all these things, then it looks like we haven't done our job for all the parties that are up there. So just just going forward, can you just keep us updated on, we don't need the specifics, but just generally what's happening so we know if we're asked?
Yeah, we can balance that line between what we need to do with the individual consent holders and recognising the interest of the zone committee.
Thanks very much. Thank you. Chris.
Yeah, Judith, as far as the issue here, we've got a plan, a land and water plan that has the sensitive catchments, and they've got rules around that. Are you saying, or is ECAN saying, that the plan is not meeting the outcomes that's required in the main land and water plan, or what actually is the high level issue that's being dealt with?
Okay, we've got two issues here, and this was traversed in Ministry for the Environment's recent work on the Lessons Learned report. So that this one aspect is we really early on identified we needed a planning provision around sensitive lakes, which we put into the land and water plan. The intent was always to come back and revisit were the provisions around the restrictions, I guess, or controls around activities strong enough, but with the intervening changes in policy direction and the range of sub-regional plans that really focused on the nutrient limit setting aspects on the plains, that work never happened. So we've got a planning framework that really, I mean, our future plan will look different about what types of activities can occur up there as far as managing intensification, for want of a better phrase. Yeah. So we had that is the issue. So there is the provisions under the RMA, and I've got a bit of paper behind me, but the provision's not jumping out. We've got two ways we can review consents. One is we can review it to give effect to a land and water plan or a plan, and that the Ashburton low flow review was done under that aspect in the Resource Management Act. The other time we can review a consent is when it's, so section 129 is around when the consents that are in place are not delivering the policy outcomes that were identified in the plan. So that comes to the bit about and that's the reason for reviewing these consents in this case. We're really clear that the water quality objectives are not being met in those high country lakes, so we have the ability to use that review. It's not a review approach that Environment Canterbury's used often.
Okay, that's cool. So to go changing condition consents, you've got to be pretty confident that you know the sources and that you are going to have an effect. If not, it's going to have a big effect on farming, and it may not actually affect the water quality unless we've got the sources sorted out as to what the problem is. Is that right?
So that's the work of about why you have to do a little bit of pre-work before you go, yes, we will review them, because when you do, you have to have those draft consent conditions in place. So that's the work we're underway at the moment, and that's the conversation we're wanting to have with the farmers.
I knew you were saying more in the initial part of it, so yeah, that's great, thank you.
Yeah, Judy, for these consents, will they be coming through MKT and Akora, our whenua consultancy? Well, we're not came through yet.
No, they will be, just like all our consents do, or all these farming land use consents do. So yes, they'll be part of the consent review process. Yeah. But as I said, we're just in that exploratory stage. Yeah.
Oh, no, well, thanks very much for coming online. You haven't got anything to do with David Moore's appointment, have you?
Sorry, Jude, he won't know what the hell he's talking about. No, you probably don't even know. No, it's just that I'm going to be taking over, looking after OTOP, and Jamie Grant is going to be looking after Ashburton. So I've just hit them with that, and they were celebrating so hard before you came in. So that's what he's on about.
Well, thanks very much for your time, and we'll look forward to keeping updated with what you can when you can. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Take care.
I'd just like to add a wee bit more on to David's. These next two meetings will be my last two. I'll be resigning as Tamutu representative, health reasons and age reasons. There was 14 of us, now it's only down to 2. Her sister died just 2 weeks ago, so far now said, slow down, Dad.
So have you got a younger founder replacement for us, Liz?
It will be on the cards. We've got from now to sort of next January to find somebody.
Because we really would like someone from your...
We're like 40s anyway. But, I mean, I don't want to see, I don't think the far now wants to see me driving down here all the time.
I understand that. Appreciate that. Sorry to hear about you. Okay, well, on that note, nothing else. Jen, you might better do the closing. Karakia, please.
Kia tau ngā mana ki taka a te mea ngaro, ki runga ki tēnā o tātou. Kia mahia te hua mā kihi, kia toi te kupu, toi te mana, toi te aroha, toi te reo Māori. Kia tūturu, kia whakamaua, kia tina. Tina, haumi e, hui e, tā iki e.
Thank you.